Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I started this video yesterday. I got a bunch of Chris Cuomo stuff to get to. Some stuff about Prince Harry and the royal family, which seems to be unraveling a bit. Oprah stuff with that, show about mental illness. And I didn't get to all that, so I'm going to go in reverse order and start from the future and go back to the past. And with Chris Cuomo's apologizing today, and I had some other clips of him yesterday being being obstinate. And so let's start here with JoJo, though. UFOs, ask Obama, Biden quips when questioned about unidentified aerial phenomenon. And I've been calling JoJo President JoJo Magoo, which is true because of his, whatever. But he also looks a lot like Mr. Burns here, right? Looking old. I mean, he walks away from the stage. So let's
President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you. Come on, Walter.
So let's watch this part again because he forgets he's connected wireless. He's got a wire here where people are telling him what to say, right? And so, because he's listening to people ask him questions. So this is him having somebody tell him, whisper in his ear what to do and say, but he forgets he has that in there, and this happens.
Thank you. Come on, Walt, let's go.
Woo! He won't tell us about UFOs. Woo! The way they clapping. He just looks sad and Mr. Burns-like and just, I mean, he's just, the deliverance kid. I mean, I've all these different things I've called him over the years, and they're not good ones. I mean, he's a nightmare. He's really, really old. I mean, at some point, he's way past the, when people retire. He's in his, he's 70s, late 70s, he's 78. And he's not doing well. And he wasn't great beforehand. He was a mess, never presidential. And so the thing about UFOs, and I've covered this in recent videos, I'm not going to get into it here, but there is overwhelming evidence of just on every level, genetically in human beings, but also in terms of ancient art and all these things about space people, myths, and, not just myths, but stories. I shouldn't say myths, stories in Aboriginal culture. Around 5,000 years ago, it seemed like that these beings that were here, these other humanoids, just took off. They abandoned the earth and left whatever, was here, the human race that was, a slave race, and just took off, right? And they'll never tell you that. They know stuff that they're withholding, and that's the whole, I just made a long video about, what's the case for human beings, making the case for God, making the case to God for the continuation of our species. I just made this long video yesterday. And in that is, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Why am I here? And, I want to talk about that more in other, more spiritually oriented videos. But what's your true purpose? And our system withholds that from you. If you ask yourself, what's your goal? What's your overall goal? What do you hope to achieve in your lifetime? And you ask most people, it's, some materialistic thing, some accomplishment, maybe something to do with their family, right? And they go through various stages. You have career goals, you have relationship goals, right? You want to find somebody to get married when you're young. You want to have a career. You want to have, lifestyle. You want to have a house. You want to have, so many kids. And then as you get older, I want to leave something behind for my children, they're materialistic goals, most of them, that have to do with relationships and finances. But what's your overall purpose here? Why are you here? Why am I here? Why am I, in this human body? And, I want to get into that in another video, but I think it's something for people to think about. What's your purpose? And ask other people, what's your overall purpose? What's your, if you had one, thing that you think about as being your overall goal, what would that be? And our system is something that distorts that creates an illusion. And again, I'll repeat this in another video because it's important. But having a goal, right? So my goal started when I began practicing the Heartfulness meditation, this idea of merging back with the source, this idea of returning to the source. And so, but most people don't have a goal like that. And so, again, I want to come back to that, but this is JoJo, like just getting greasy, because no matter what they tell you about UFOs, it's going to be a lie. They'll never tell you the truth. They don't tell you the truth about anything, or they'll withhold key details and key information. They aren't telling you the true history of the planet Earth and the human species. So this is a little tidbit. Pink says she felt sad after watching Britney doc. I could have reached out more. She feels sad that she didn't reach out because Pink could have helped Britney. What do you think would happen if you had reached out? Absolutely nothing. Britney would still be exactly like she is. Crazy, And then there's this. I got a thing to do about Bill Burr because a bunch of people sent me this video about him with on the Conan O'Brien show. I have a different take, and a unique take on this that I haven't said before. Also, a bunch of viewers been sending me this video, this girl yelling at her school board, and I have a different take on that as well. So I'm going to come back to this, but I'm just putting this here in the beginning, and I'm going to talk about this more later. Fauci won't be wearing a mask when he goes to a Washington Nationals game. Of course, JoJo's maskless here, which we, see, and that's a new thing that's happening. And yet there's many people who are, a majority of people are still choosing to wear masks. So I started covering this yesterday, and I made like a little bit of this video about Chris Cuomo, but I didn't have the full clip, which I realized this morning. Now I'm in the editing process. So I just redid the whole thing today with the longer clip from Chris Cuomo explaining about troubles. Chris Cuomo's got troubles.
If you would, allow me a moment. If you'll remember,
Take your moment, crazy Chris.
I told you back in the beginning of March, I can't cover my brother's troubles. It wouldn't be fair.
He just can promote and celebrate his success and, act as like a campaign event, even though he's a news person, and that's a conflict of interest. He can do that. But when the guy gets in trouble, well, yeah, I gotta absolve myself. You should have recused yourself from your brother altogether. Like, you can't be but this is CNN admitting that it sucks. And I talk about that, in the other part from yesterday. This is CNN, exposing their underbelly. And we just went through this with Don Lemon in my Don Lemon videos. CNN is admitting it sucks, right? When Don Lemon delivered a message that would lead people to believe that he was leaving CNN on purpose, he did it on purpose because it created a viral moment. It was obvious that he was, the way he worded it, the way he presented it, and was withholding information when he was just really changing the name of his sucky show. If he came out and said, yeah, I'm changing the name, we're changing the format a little bit, it wouldn't have been newsworthy. But when he pretended to leave, it created a viral moment. And when he did that, he was manipulating his audience, and he's supposed to be a news person and a truth teller. And when CNN allowed all that to happen, right, he should have been fired for that and showed that there's no journalistic integrity there. They're admitting everything that we say about them. They're admitting they're fake news. They're admitting that they lie about everything. And Chris Cuomo, this event, so this is a good thing. Like, I don't, he should be fired, but the fact that he's not, it makes me happier. The fact that Don Lemon gets away with what he does, because we're not watching him. Like, this isn't a show I watch, right? This isn't something that I care about. I don't watch CNN for news. Like, I watch it so I can make fun of them, right? And they're giving me more material, and they're giving us all more material. So keep all these guys, right? Celebrate them. Give them 4 shows. I don't care. Like, pay them more money. Like, I don't mind if they're, like, I won't be happy when they're fired because that means I just got to learn about another scumbag,
And you got it then, and I appreciate you understanding. Now, today, there are stories out there about me offering
let's go back to that. We didn't understand. Like, we had no power to do anything. We understand that you're corrupt. We understand that you're not, a journalist. We understand that you're not news. We understand you have no integrity.
Appreciate you understanding. Now, today, there are stories out there about me offering my brother advice. Of course I do. This is no revelation. I have said it publicly, and I certainly have never hidden it. I can be objective about just about any topic. I can be objective about just about any topic. I can be objective about just about any topic.
Can you believe these MNFers, right? You're a Democrat. You're a liberal. You're anti-Trump. I mean, these are all prejudicial positions that you now take with you to your job. Some of this is Fox News' fault because they set the template on this, and now MSNBC and CNN have taken it to a new level. And I'm not saying that news was great when I was a kid because, I really didn't watch it, and, I could go back and watch it. But I do know you would have a lot of trouble figuring out what side the newscasters, the, journalists were on in terms of whether they were a Democrat or Republican. And now you have no trouble at all. Like, what networks are for which party, and you want to know which journalists and pundits are for which, whoever it is, right? Which candidates they endorse. They literally are subjective in every possible way. And so for him to say he's objective, like you don't even know what the word means.
I can be objective about just about any topic, but not about my family. Those of you who watch this show get it. Like you, I bet, my family means everything to me. And I am fiercely loyal to them. I'm family first, job second. But being a journalist...
But him saying that would mean that he recuses himself from ever covering his brother, right? Because the fundamental, journalistic problem here for any journalist is that you and politicians should be adversarial to some extent. Just like when you're a sports writer and you're covering athletes or sports, person, a pundit or whatever it is, that you have an adversarial relationship because you're looking for the truth behind what they're saying. I mean, politicians even more. You're supposed to be a check, in the check and balance system, you're supposed to be a check and a balance in terms of, keeping politicians honest. And so when you turn into an advocate, somebody who's pimping out a politician, especially if it's your relative, and he had, Andrew Cuomo's on his show, and he had all this stuff going on, right, where he would promote them. He would promote his brother and talk about him like he was a hero, then that's a journalistic problem, like a huge journalistic problem. Because you're now campaigning for somebody, which is what all the networks do. Fox has been doing it for years, and now CNN and MSNBC are worse. So I cover this in my video. It's called, if you love Trump so much, why don't you marry him? Because they're obsessed with Trump. But when they use the same talking points as the Democratic Party, when CNN and MSNBC use the same talking points as the Democratic Party, or Fox News uses the same talking points. I gave the example of CNN and the Democratic Party and MSNBC all using the phrase, the big lie, when they're talking about Trump saying the election was rigged and fixed against him. They say the big lie over and over again. And you'll see this when the networks are covering something, the politicians and the pundits they bring on, and then the CNN employees, I don't want to call them reporters or anchors because they're just, actors, all use the exact same phraseology. And so they're all on board in terms of they're creating a narrative. And that's completely subjective. Like, that's really bad. Like, you can't call it news anymore. That's no longer news. It's propaganda. And so that's why it's called fake news. And he exhibits this more than anybody else, right? He's very one-sided, and especially to do with his brother. So he should have never had his brother on the show. He should never have spoken about his brother because he's not, he's like admitting that he's not objective when it comes to him. And there's like laws about this. There's campaign laws about candidates being given free airtime, right? Because they have to pay for this. They have to pay for commercial airtime. And if you're going to be a living commercial, you're going to turn your show into a commercial, which it all is. It's either a commercial for the Democratic Party or the CIA or whatever it might be, the intelligence community. Because people, and I don't know how much it is, anymore, but it used to be that you considered somebody who was on the news as having graduated with journalistic credentials, right? And they do this as a full-time job, so they know more than you do. They know more about the ins and outs of what's going on in the world of politics and, world policy and economic policy, and they're the experts, and they were communicating objectively what was going on. And so when they come out and endorse somebody, you were like, oh, wow, they know more than me, right? And that's why newspapers used to endorse candidates or, whoever it was. And that meant something to people who were undecided and trusted Chris Cuomo's or trusted Walter Cronkite or trusted the New York Times. I mean, that's less now, because of the truth community and the internet. But it is something where you're endorsing a point of view when you're supposed to be objective. In his case, it's even worse because of his brother and, what his brother had just done in terms of crimes and, unethical behaviors and things.
And a brother to a politician is unique and a unique challenge, and I have a unique responsibility.
It's not a unique challenge. If you have journalistic integrity and you follow a set of rules, you would have never had your brother on the show, especially not promoting him like he was a hero. Do you remember what happened? Like, he brought his brother on the show when he was in his basement. He had COVID, and his brother was being celebrated by CNN more than anybody else as a hero. People were calling him the real president and things like this. And he sent people with COVID, senior citizens with COVID, back into nursing homes while they still were infectious. And it killed like another 9,000. There was a total of 13,000 seniors that died because it's a horrible thing to do. It's like, you have to be brain dead or murderous to take the most vulnerable population. Old people are the most vulnerable population when it comes to COVID. And he put infected people into nursing homes. It's like, was he murderous or just stupid? Like astronomically stupid. And then he and his team covered it up. And then to cover that up, to make that less, they came out with all this Me Too stuff, which is bad for him, but isn't as bad as being a murderer. And so during that period of time when he was making those horrible decisions, after he made those horrible decisions about putting sick people, COVID-infected people, back into nursing homes, he was celebrated by CNN and MSNBC as a hero, especially by this clown. And so if you follow any rules, you would have never got yourself in that position. But CNN is admitting, and he's admitting, they're not news here. They're admitting that they basically broke all kinds of journalistic ethics by having his brother on his show and promoting his politician brother when they're supposed to have an adversarial relationship.
Balance those roles. It's not always easy. People can say and write what they want, but I want you to know the truth. How I helped my brother also matters. When my brother's situation became turbulent, being looped into calls with other friends of his and advisors that did include some of his staff, I understand why that was a problem for CNN. It will not happen again.
CNN should fire him, but CNN won't because they suck, right? Well, that's a problem for, news in general. He was giving him advice. Plus, he could tell his brother what other reporters in the news media was, what they were going to do, right? One of his bits of advice was just don't quit, just hang in there, which I've said before, because it just goes away, right? So he's got inside information about how the adversarial news division, the news, what news is supposed to be, the media is supposed to be. He had inside information of how they were going to cover his brother and what was the sentiment and things like that. So he's sharing that information, which he should never do, right? As a journalist. and CNN allowing him to stay is just basically admitting they're rolling over and exposing their beastly belly and allowing people to, see how sucky they are, right? Because he should 100% be fired. Like if it was a news organization, a true one, he'd have to be fired. But it's great that they're not. By not firing them, they're admitting they're fake news and that they suck.
It was a mistake because I put my colleagues here, who I believe are the best in the business, in a
funny business.
Bad spot. I never intended for that. I would never intend for that. And I am sorry for that. It's also important for you to understand, not only do I not cover this here, I've never tried to influence this network's coverage of my brother.
What are you talking about? You have completely, by your very presence there, you are doing that. Like they know, right? And by bringing your brother on your show and, pimping him out there as some incredible governor, and then CNN following suit, like that was the position they all took. And so you completely did that, right? Like that's just a bold-faced lie, which again is just them admitting that they're not news, right? This is CNN admitting that they suck, right? They suck so bad, and they're just completely backing this clown. And what, no journalist should ever be. I mean, he's been completely compromised by this situation.
In fact, I've been walled off from it. This is a unique and difficult situation, and that's okay. I know where the line is. I can respect.
Because I crossed the crap out of it like every chance I got. I know where the line is because I've been over it many a time.
And still be there for my family, which I must. I have to do that. I love my brother. I love my family. I love my job. And I love and respect my colleagues here at CNN.
But family first.
Again, to them, I am truly sorry. You know who I am. You know what I'm about. And I want this to be said in public.
I'm coming out as Fredo. I'm a Fredo, okay? I'm a Fredo. Gosh darn it.
To you who give me the opportunity, and to my colleagues who make me better at what I do.
So again, this is just, I'm happy because it's another case of CNN. Like they just had Don Lemon lie to his audience, manipulate them, right? By the way he presented his, stupid name change. They just had that. And then they have this now where, again, like this is something a journalist should never do, whether it's his brother or anybody else, right? If you're going to be a journalist, you recuse yourself from covering, your brother. But he didn't do that. He covered his brother in a favorable way. And then when things went south on his brother, he advised him and he refused to report on, like the other side of the story, which his brother was a lying scumbag, manslaughterer, or even murderer. I mean, what do you say about somebody who takes the most vulnerable population, senior citizens, and places sick people with a disease that kills senior citizens more than any other group? And so, like, you can't even think about how, like, either stupid that is. I mean, it is something where he should probably face criminal charges. And then his being a groper and a sniffler and a snoozler like JoJo. I mean, all these things. I don't know why they're burning Andrew Cuomo's right now. They made him a hero. Now they're burning him. Who knows why they're doing it, right? But what he did, the way he covered that, the way he played into all these things, and the way CNN, played and allowed this to happen, they're admitting they're not news. They're admitting they have no journalistic rules or integrity. Otherwise, he'd be fired. But he won't be, because Don Lemons just lied to his audience and pretended like, he was leaving CNN, which started an internet firestorm, which he basked in. And then he came out, I showed you so many videos on that. And he pretended, oh, I didn't know. And of course he knew. It was so obvious. It was like, he's a child. And so they're lying to people, literally, and, and to promote themselves. And so CNN is just a joke. Like they've just exposed themselves as a complete joke. And this guy is the head joker. So let's segue into this. It has so much comedic value. Why Alfonso Ribeiro didn't teach Will Smith the Carlton for the Fresh Prince finale. My goal was to let him look bad. So there's a lot here. Because The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is one of the worst shows. There's a lot of these bad sitcoms, right? It's Saved by the Bell level, teen sitcom, just really bad. Just horrible TV. And the older you get, the worse it is. Like, as you mature in your consciousness, I had all these people praising Friends, and I got to do a whole comment video. I got a whole bunch of comments on a variety of subjects. I want to do an epic comic video. But I had people who loved Friends, and I'm like, well, you're going to get old enough, hopefully, and mature enough where you look back on the show and realize how bad it is. It's unwatchable. And so the first part to this is anybody who was on The Fresh Prince is going to look bad because it is, offensive on how remedial it is. But for him to say that the Carlton dance, what's hilarious about this is he thinks that you need to be taught to do the Carlton dance, right? That somehow doing the Carlton, which is this right here, you somehow need to be taught to do it. Like you couldn't watch that once, anybody, and replicate it. Like he thinks that you need some sort of special training. Like he's the expert. I'm Carlton. I'm the Carlton that they speak of when they mention the Carlton dance. And if I can teach you how to do it, you won't be able to do it, right? Look at how effeminate Will Smith was back then, as opposed to now. He's like, I'm not going to teach anybody the Carlton dance because, I'm an expert. And you're going to look stupid when you try it, right? Like you need some sort of, expertise in a choreographer to learn how to do the Carlton. So there's a lot of Prince Harry news. Prince Harry takes heat for calling First Amendment bonkers.
What I want to say about the First Amendment. I still don't understand it, but it is bonkers. I don't want to start sort of going down the First Amendment route because that's a huge subject and one of which I don't understand because I've only been here for a short period of time.
So great. You've only been here a short period of time, but you're going to call the First Amendment bonkers. Yeah, these guys think that they can say anything they want, right? We don't have that in England. And then he comes out and starts talking. Watch the Powerful First trailer for Prince Harry and Oprah Winfrey's mental health series. We'll get into some of his revelations about his mom. But first, let's watch the trailer.
All over the world, people are in some kind of mental, psychological, emotional pain.
What words have you heard around mental health? Crazy?
Lost it, can't keep it together.
I have a master's degree in counseling. I worked in treatment centers. I counseled people. I worked as a clinician. I diagnosed people. I did diagnostic assessment. So I have some expertise in this field. And then, of course, doing the Heartfulness system, which is a different way of looking at this, mental health. And so the thing about mental health is the reason why people are crazy, why people have psychological issues, is because the system sucks. There's electromagnetic poisoning. This is something from the Heartfulness teaching that's said over and over again. Whispers from the Brighter World. Electromagnetic pollution, it affects the subtle bodies. And then there's neurasthenia. I've talked about this over and over again recently in videos, that there was, this stuff to do with telegraph operators, which was the onset of so many mood disorders, depression and nervous disorders and things like ADHD. The use of electricity has hurt human beings. We're made up of mostly water. Water is a conductor of electricity, and we have electricity in our system. And we have energetic subtle bodies. And electromagnetic pollution, that also includes Wi-Fi, it includes everything, has a negative effect on people. It doesn't kill you, but it disrupts your, vibrations. It messes with you on a spiritual level and on a physical level and a mental level. And so that's, people are on the internet so much now, so that's a big part of it. You see all the things that are happening since the shutdown. People aren't outside. They're locked in. Some people don't go outside the whole year. They don't go outside and they're not out in nature at all. There are people that very seldom go to a natural place and are outside in a natural environment, like even a couple days a year, never mind daily, right? And so people don't have, interpersonal relationships anymore because of the internet. So there's all these reasons that have to do with the system. Then there's the foods, right? Processed foods, all of which affect you on a mental level. And then people are self-medicating, taking drugs and alcohol and all these things that affect you as well. And so that isn't going to be said here, right? They're going to deal with just the symptom, right? And how these people, who is just about everybody, can be diagnosed with something, should be catered to. Their psychological diagnoses should be catered to the broken, because that's the point of view, instead of admitting that our system is horrible, that our economic system, our food system, our social system, every level of our system, our warlike tendencies, watching TV, being on the internet, is making people crazy. Like, it's just that simple. Like, it's a systemic problem. They never confront the system. If you pick up the DSM-5, this big, thick book of psychological diagnoses, they never say anything about why the system is making you crazy, right? Like, it's making you have these, it's a systemic problem. It's always the individual. You're the one who can't cope. We got to fix the individual.
With that stigma of being labeled the other, the telling of the story, being able to say, this is what happened to me, is crucial.
See, I write stories, I write them on my own. Only I can read them, but the doctor calls it self-harm. So can some...
See, they're trying to make the symptoms and the reaction okay. Like, we're making this part of normal human behavior, instead of saying that the system is making people crazy. And, overpopulation is another problem, crowded cities. I could go on and on of all the ways. See, if you put an animal in an unnatural environment like the zoo, you see these zoo animals, they develop this pacing, whatever it's called. I used to know it. There's a term for the pacing that animals do. Please don't tell me, I could look it up myself. But there's all these behaviors that animals do to cope, right? Because they're not living in a natural environment. They're in the zoo. And so, we're like them, right? We're not living like normal, natural human beings were designed to live. And therefore, right, people are exhibiting abnormal behaviors.
Somebody tell me it's okay not to be okay, and do not tell me quietly, because mental health matters, and that's the reality.
Why are you screaming at me, bro?
Just sitting down and listening to somebody?
There's joy in that. I can put a smile on, but inside feel completely broken.
So I call 2020 the year of the broken. And again, it's something that's been going on for a while. And it is where they're promoting the idea that being broken is okay. That being broken is normal. And celebrating the brokenness. Not trying to fix the brokenness. Making it something that is acceptable. And even encouraging people to say they're broken. Encouraging people to express being broken. And, this is something where celebrities are doing it and people are copying them.
I don't tell this story from my own self-service. I've been through it and people need help.
You can't say you're an advocate for mental health if you don't get to the problem. If you're just addressing the symptoms. If you're saying, everyone should coddle the people who are most severely affected by this. And make their behaviors normal, right? And give them more, right? Dump more into them. Put more of your energy into the people who are broken. When you're not addressing that it's a systemic problem. Oprah and Lady Gaga have benefited from this system, the financial aspect of the system. And yet they are, people who are claiming that they have this dysfunction, but they would never say, we got to have a new system.
It's just something I accepted.
See, part of what they're doing here is they want to make it okay for people to come out and say they have mental issues, that there's no stigma.
To make that decision to receive help is not a sign of weakness. In today's world, more than ever, it is a sign of strength.
So it's good to admit, or to be honest about what's going inside you and seek help. And that's a positive thing. But as long as you don't deal with the fact that it's a system that is causing people to have issues. And I've gone through this so much, over and over again, all the various aspects of our system that make people have mental issues and just low functioning and, because we're unnatural, right? But there's like solutions. I think there's real solutions that aren't about just talking about and staying in the problem, remaining in the problem and making it okay that you have this behavior and this psychological makeup. The Heartfulness system, in a way that, isn't focused on mental health, but the cleaning aspect of the system and the transmission can help people cope with the dysfunctional nature of the system, what I call the beast. And it's going to have a negative effect on everybody because it just is, but it can be mitigated to a certain extent. And then you just got to deal, right? You just got to push through and realize like there's difficulties just based in the system itself, and there's reasons for you to endure this, and you just have to, you can dwell on it forever, and that's a part of the modern day psychological system in the world of the New Age Oprah mentality, where people are just self-indulgent in the problem, right? In their dysfunction. And they just want to talk about it, and they want other people to compensate for them. And this, the more difficulty somebody has, the more they expect other people to carry them through life or whatever it is, right? Like I've been through this. The broken, being celebrated, the broken demanding that other people who are, who also have problems, but not as severe problems, have to carry the broken through life, and you're supposed to like it, right? You're supposed to prop other people up as they, indulge in their brokenness. And so there's these other things to do with Prince Harry. Let's get to them. So here's more headlines. Furious William and Harry say Martin Bashir BBC interview led to Diana's death. And some interesting things were said here. Furious Prince William and Harry have blasted BBC chiefs and journalist Martin Bashir for tricking Prince Diana into giving her famous interview, which they said fueled her fear, paranoia, and isolation and led to her death. And so, well, how does her fear and paranoia and isolation create her dying in a car accident in a tunnel under suspicious circumstances? Like that led to her murder? Is that what they're implying? That her doing this interview created animosity from the so-called firm, the people that control the palace and the queen or whatever, and so they felt like they had to get rid of her. Like that makes more sense to me. William insisted Panorama special should never be aired again, adding the interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others. Well, it could be that your dad was banging another woman who he loved, Camilla Parker Bowles, for years. And then Harry added, our mother was an incredible woman who dedicated her life to service. She was resilient, brave, and unquestionably honest. The ripple effect of a culture of exploitation and unethical practices ultimately took her life. Prince Harry tells Oprah that Diana's death led him to drink and use drugs and accused royals of total neglect. The royal family over and over again. Prince Harry slams Dad Charles for making him suffer as a child. Prince Harry has no regrets at all about Megxit. Prince Harry opens up about panic attacks, drinking, and drugs over Diana's death. It's a similar headline. History repeating. Harry likens relationship with Meghan to Diana and Dodi Fahid's relationship, which also, contributed to the murder, right? So I think that's, mostly a good thing because it's coming out that the royal family sucks, right? It's so many different ways. And, the only reason you can make a case for the royal family and a royalty is that if there was some truth to the idea that they were somehow genetically superior and born to lead. born to rule. That's their claim to fame. And so any signs of mental illness or dysfunction, and there's so much in their history. You know, in the show The Crown, there were these, you know, kids that were born and they were completely mentally ill and, you know, low functioning, and they were in institutions, and they hid them away. You know, they pretended that they had died and they put them in these institutions because they didn't want anybody to know that there were these genetic flaws, you know, because their whole claim to fame is they have superior genetics. And that's why there's, you know, rules to breeding, and, you know, who they can marry and all the rest of it. But when you see that they're all effed up, that it's a messed up family, then the, you know, the cracks and the fissure and all the implications, because the royal family, the British royal family, and royal families around the world have had such an effect on our system, and still do, in shaping the narratives. I mean, that's one of the primary lies behind the hierarchical system of our world. So I want to get into this thing with Bill Burr. And then there's this, you know, little girl that is being put out there because she lambasted the local educational board members, which is just, you know, I have a different opinion about this, about both things, the Bill Burr thing and this little girl yelling at these adults, right, which is, to me, not cool behavior. And just to preface these two things that I'm going to talk about here, I'll show you the girl lambasting the board. I'll just talk about Bill Burr because it covers, you know, one of those YouTube taboo subjects. So I just have to talk about it. Most of you have probably seen it already because so many people have mentioned it or sent me something with it. But one of the things you have to know about the truth community, one of the flaws in the truth community, is that all of us have been indoctrinated in the lies. And there's so many lies, not just historical lies or societal lies or, you know, economic lies, but also religious lies and the true nature of why we're here, what I was talking about before. Very few people have a real sense of a purpose, of a goal. And that has a lot to do with religion sucking, but then everything else as well. And the problem with this is when you have been taught lies, like your foundational building blocks is about lies, then it's very hard for you to, you know, figure out the truth, right? And I'm going to restate this again after going through these other two subjects, but just as a reference point to look at it in a different way, is that we all agree on, you know, people in the truth community, that we're being lied to in some capacity by some group or another, that we have been lied to, and that the information we're getting or have gotten isn't accurate. But then people try to figure out the truth from the lies, right? Diving deep into the lie, diving deep into the illusion, and they come up with things that, you know, possibly could be true, you know, but probably aren't. I mean, most of the stuff in the truth community is almost as bad, or maybe in some cases worse, than the lies that you're hearing from the official system, you know, the official story, because people are just, you know, grasping at anything, hoping that they can figure out the truth, and you never will, because, you know, you're dealing with a flawed foundation. Your foundation of your personality, my personality, all of our personalities and our understanding of the world is based in lies. And so you're limited in your ability to ever see the truth. It'd be different if you got the truth right off the bat and then you were told lies, but you had that fundamental truth, understanding what the true nature of human life was and, you know, other levels of truth. But when you're given lies about everything, and religion is a big part of it because of the nature of God, then you're always going to be trying to bring in new information and rearranging that foundation. And it's, you know, it's a it's not something that's going to be successful. So let me show you this clip of this little girl, and then I'll talk about the Bill Burr thing as well. I often talk about here is behavior. That if you're against the behavior, you're against the behavior, not against who's doing the behavior. Because the problem with our world right now, America specifically, is people on the left and the right, or the truthers or the sheeple or whatever it is, they're okay with behaviors as long as it's somebody they like who's doing it. I see it all the time in the comment section. I see it all the time in links that people send me, because there's a little girl here and she's being a brat, but she's anti-mask. And so people agree with her. Many of you are going to agree with her because, her treatment of this school board, because, you agree with her point of view. So you think it's acceptable that she behaves this way. And to me, it isn't. I'm going to go through it here because it's an important distinction. Like I was saying about Chris Cuomo. If you're against a behavior and you rail against a behavior, then you have to be against that behavior. So I'm cutting out this part of the video for various YouTube-related reasons. But you can watch it anywhere. It's just all over the internet if you want to know what I'm talking about here. It's not amazing. It's not a revolution, and they're not standing up. This kid is just parroting their parents, and their parents have whatever level of consciousness and awareness that they have, but not enough social awareness and good parenting skills to know that teaching their kid to be disrespectful like this to the school board is not only counterproductive, but it's bad for the kid and their character development. The first part of this guy's saying that these kids are all outraged and they're standing up and speaking truth to power and they have courage, and he goes on, whatever. I couldn't, it's just clownery. Again, this isn't truther. This isn't, to me, somebody seeking the truth, because it's fundamentally dishonest to say these kids are making these decisions based in their own understanding, right? A kid this age obviously is hearing this from the parents, and the parents are there, brought the kid there, and are laughing and clapping and things and promoting this behavior. But the school board isn't going to look favorably on this. When you're an authority figure and you have somebody come at you like this kid comes at you, like I get negative comments all the time, and I ban people, and once in a while I make a comment video because I want you to know that you suck, right? That you're ineffective in your ability to communicate your butthurtedness or whatever it is. It's not having a positive effect. You can't approach people like this because everybody's defensive, and everybody, this makes people defensive when you attack them or whatever, and it makes your side look bad, which you can see here. And so it's not a positive step. But more importantly, you have no power in this situation. This kid has no power in the situation because these school boards get federal funding. The states get federal funding for education. Without federal funds, most school systems can't run. The states can't run their school systems. And so the federal funding is predicated on the cooperation in terms of masks and other protocols and things that they're putting out there. And so that's going to have a lot more influence than some 8-year-old kid lambasting, and their parents or whoever it is. Understanding this, like these people, there's a lot of videos out there. There's this woman and she's not wearing a mask. And I don't like masks, and the masks, after I had COVID and I put on a mask and went to a store and I was like, all right, maybe it's not so bad. It started to make me have like an asthmatic reaction. Like I started to struggle to breathe. It was like almost like re-triggering COVID symptoms. And like it took about 5 minutes or so. But I realized it was not, a positive thing. And maybe I'd get used to it like so many people get used to it. But my initial experience, like when you smoke your first cigarette, you cough and it's unpleasant, right? I mean, there's lots of experiences you have where your body says, yeah, don't do that anymore. And that's the way I felt about masks. But these employees at the store, some of them are more rigid than others, right? And some of them are dickish about it. But they're just doing what they're told. They have store policies. Sometimes the store enforces them. Sometimes they don't. But it isn't the employees who are responsible. And it isn't the school board that's responsible here. And I saw this woman, maybe it was a New York Post video, or maybe somebody sent it to me. And she was a white woman, and she, they called her a Karen. I think it was the New York Post. And she didn't want to wear a mask, and she starts yelling at the employees. And then she calls the employee and the N-word, and just, she looks horrible, and she makes anti-maskers look horrible. And so you have to figure out, a way to deal with it, right? Because what we now see, and it's almost a shocker to me, because I've gone into some stores, a number of stores in various places. I was doing some traveling. But now the mandates for wearing masks have been lifted. And then there's whatever to do with, JoJo's proclamation, right? And so most people know that you don't have to wear a mask anymore. And they're still wearing them. They know it's not mandatory. And the reason that I thought people were wearing masks before was they didn't want to look like they were bad people, because they made it sound like if you didn't wear a mask, you were a bad person. So I thought for most parts, going back to this Fauci thing, where Fauci says they say he's not going to wear a mask to the Nationals game. Yeah, but he wasn't wearing his mask at the last Nationals game. There's photos, right? And so now people don't have to wear masks, and you don't look like a bad person because people just assume that you've had, the you-know-what, and the you-know-what twice. And so all of those people could take off their masks and they're not. Like, think about this, because I remember it was like when I started to go to the grocery store and there was about 10% people wearing masks. And then it got up to like 25%. Then it was like 50% for a while, 50% wearing masks and 50% not. And then it became mandatory, and then it was just everybody. Like, everyone had to wear them. And then, there's been various, on a local level, depending where you live, the mask mandates fell off and people are still wearing them. And now the CDC and Fauci and Joe Biden aren't wearing masks anymore. And they were the big maskers. They were telling everyone to wear masks. And they're saying now it's relaxed for all these people that have had the you-know-what, right? And so all those people could stop wearing masks, and they're not doing it because they are wanting to wear the mask or think the masks are protecting them. They're still scared, even though the authority that told them the mask would work in the first place is now saying you don't need them anymore. They're still like, well, I'm still going to wear it, right? Like, think about that. So there's this video of Bill Burr, and he's talking to Conan O'Brien, and he gets into how, there's these conspiracy theories that he calls it, that, he's somebody who's talked about so-called conspiracy theories or truther theories in the past, so he obviously watches these types of videos. And he was saying that why would the people I call the controllers want to get rid of the sheeple? Because the sheeple are the ones who are cooperating with this, you-know-what, right? And so he says, why would they want to get rid of the sheeple? And that's a valid theory, because I've talked about this before. My wife and I, are talking about it, because there's all these theories out there, and that's something to think about, because why would the controllers want to get rid of the sheeple? And I'm not mad at Bill Burr, and I don't get mad at anybody about this stuff. And I don't get mad at the people who are, choosing to go with the system. And I'm not, I don't care. I just don't care what other people think or believe or choose to do, especially now. Of course, if it infringes on me and other people, that sucks, right? And then you look at it like, what are your reasonable options? What can you do? What can you do to combat it? In most cases, the answer is nothing. It's just going in this way, and there's no way to stop it. And I've talked about this before. There's no revolution. There's no, people power anymore. There's no, anything out there stopping this from happening. I mean, there are things that are stopping it because you can see that the controllers get disappointed because their agenda doesn't take hold, right? Their agenda is, falling apart in various ways. But my feeling about it is, I make these videos and I express that there's, in my opinion, in my experience, a solution. In the Heartfulness meditation, I want to talk about this longer, in a video just about this. But my experience of the Heartfulness meditation and how it's changed me inside and made me a better person and just, increased my abilities in so many ways to function as a human being. In fact, I was a low-functioning human being, and I consider myself a much higher-functioning human being now, after doing the Heartfulness system for 27 years, and able to cope and adapt to all the things that are going on in the world and around us all. And so for me, in my experience, and just knowing what I know about the Heartfulness system, that it's a solution. given by God and the divine hierarchy for this particular problem we're all having. But, how many people are going to hear that, or how many people will try it and experience it the same way, is out of my control. Like, I don't care about that part. Like, I just care about what I'm supposed to do. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to share that solution. And also my insights to the problem, which I do in these videos. So I share my insights to the problem. I get it out of my system. I have a, platform here, what I believe the problem to be, the systemic problem. And I think I do a good job of explaining that, but whatever it is. And then I have my solution, what I believe to be the solution. And people can take it or leave it. Like, I've gotten to that point where I don't care about what people do. Like, it's nice to hear, oh, wow, that's helped me, or, whatever. And it sucks a little bit to hear, oh, like, you suck, whatever. But it's very mild. Like, those two reactions. Because all as I care about is doing my duty to God in the work and leaving the results to God and people's freedom of choice to themselves. And we all have, our own choices to make. And I'm talking to my wife about this. She was talking to me about, there was this thing that happened with the Heartfulness system where the master of the system, Dodgy, was saying to the American, part of the system, the American members, to come up with some ideas to bring people in. And that's sort of a new thing that's, happened since he has become the master of the system. Babaji gave a message saying that Dodgy's role was to disseminate the information and expand the mission, expand the system. Before it was just, it would grow of its own accord through word of mouth. But now they were opening it up for social media and things. And so my wife was giving me these various ideas, and they were good ideas, and we were talking about it. But I said, I've been through this with both the truther community, the heartfulness community itself, and then other people to do with heartfulness. Like, I've been through it 3 different ways, 3 different, forms of this, right? Like, where I had ideas and, like with trying to wake people up, right? So people say, all right, I'm going to try to wake other people up to, the truther community stuff. But I went through that with truther community, with sheeple, right? I went through that with sheeple. And then I also went through it with people in the heartfulness system, talking about truthful, the truther narratives, which many of them, people who are already existing members. And then I went through it with truthers, telling them about the heartfulness system. So I've done this for so many years. And I know that, your ability to affect other people and, tell them something and influence them is very limited, especially loved ones. Like, people are not talking to loved ones and family members over COVID policies and this past elections. I mean, it's very divisive, right? And it shouldn't be, because, like, who cares, right? And, maybe to some extent, the thing that I just don't hang out with people that are just going to regurgitate the mainstream narratives. Like, I want like-minded people around me, because I just can't stand those people. I don't want to hear their thoughts, right? Like, they're not, people I want to know or hang out. But I'm, perfectly fine with them choosing their own path. Like, as long as I don't have to listen to them. Like, I don't watch them. I don't pay attention to them. I don't, whatever it is. But I'm perfectly fine with everybody making their own decision, because everyone's got to, like, this is a time where you got to go all in. Like, you got to put your chips in the center of the table like you're betting on your poker hand, but not in a sense of gambling. Like, you have to make your decision and, choose to go all in on something, right? Because we're in that period of time where you just can't ride the fence, sit on the fence, and wait to see what happens. Although we should wait to see what happens, because, that's part of it. But you need to, like, say, all right, I'm going to believe in what I'm going to trust in my ability to see what's going on and make my decisions for myself and my family and live with the consequences. Because we can't trust the media and the government, but we equally can't trust people in the social media, because there's so many just boneheads or deceivers or false prophets in social media, in the so-called truther community. There's a lot of just people who are, they just don't get it, right? Or they are purposely putting out disinformation or wherever it is. And so we have to, learn to, and this is where the heartfulness system comes in, and developing the heart as an instrument to connect to God, and using that heart-based intelligence so you can follow your heart. But it takes some time to develop that. And the system, a system that purifies your heart. I mean, I don't think there's any other system out there in terms of developing one's heart as an instrument to perceive reality, as another level of intelligence. You have your mind intelligence, you have your gut intelligence, which is your emotion, your mental intelligence, your mind, and then your spiritual intelligence, your heart, and following God and following your soul and things like this. And we're reaching real choice points, like wearing a mask, or not wearing a mask, or getting the you-know-what or not getting the you-know-what, right? Whatever these things, whatever choices you're making in terms of economic choices and, building community, or like for me, growing food or whatever it might be. Everyone has to find their own way, and I'm not, if you really believe in what you believe in and what you have faith in, why do you care that other people don't? Like, why do you care about it? Why should you be concerned with what other people think or do? Why should it upset you? Because what you're thinking, what most of us are thinking in the truth community, is that things are coming to a head, right? So if you believe in Christianity and Jesus, or you believe in science, or you believe in, the Republicans or Trump, or you believe in, Joe Biden or whatever it is, then you think that the people who believe the opposite are going to be doomed, right? Like, don't you? Like, you think that the people who aren't, believing what you're believing and going along the course of action that you're going are doomed in some way. Like, those people are going to suffer in some way, even if it's after death or, whatever it is. So just let it happen, right? If they're going to suffer, why do you want them to suffer? Like, why do you, I've said this before, everything's accounted for. And that's one of the beautiful teachings of the heartfulness system and some skaras, that there is a system, a spiritual system of everything is, recorded on a spiritual level. And whatever you do, think, or say, whatever impressions you have, whatever the, things that you've done is imprinted on your soul. And your soul goes back to, wherever it goes after you die. And it's still there. All that stuff's there. You still, all the debts that you owe, all the things that you have to do, all the leftover things you haven't done, all the, issues you haven't solved, all the equations you haven't solved, problems you haven't solved, all the, experiences that you didn't do it the right way, you didn't effectively learn your lesson or whatever. You got to come back and do it again. I mean, it's a very simple understanding of how everything works. And so nobody gets away with anything, right? People don't get away with anything. Your soul records everything. And your soul is very, your soul is diligent about your ego and your persona having to go through everything it has to go through. Like, your soul knows that you don't get away with anything. That's why people have to disconnect themselves from their soul when they make bad decisions. And so you can be at peace with that all these people that you hate or you think are wrong, or, all this stuff that you think are doing the wrong thing, they are, not getting away with it. So you don't have to worry about it. This isn't your job to punish them or, even be concerned for them. Let them make their own mistakes. Just let it happen, right? You just have to figure out what you're supposed to do and do it. Like, figure out, what the best system is for you. And then, in a world full of lies, find a path of truth. And for me, it's the heartfulness system, and follow it. And then, let the results be what they are, right? At some point, you'll know, all right, I made the right decision or I didn't. I mean, that's how life really works, that you make mistakes and then you have to go redo them. Like, you're here until you figure it out. That film, The Groundhog Day, until you do it right, you're not getting out of this trap. You're not getting out of this, prison, this, the earthbound human beings, as I called them in my book, The Choice. And so once you solve the problem of the human, your human problem, all the things that you're supposed to do on a spiritual level, right? You solve this equation, you face all these challenges correctly, like a video game, you get to move to the next level. And so, if you're at that level, be happy for yourself. and set an example and pray for your brothers and sisters who aren't as fortunate. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.